What's up? This is your girl, Texas Black Diamond, aka TBD. Thank you for tuning in to Texas Black Diamond ENT, honey.
Appeals ordered an indefinite stay of execution for Rodney. But he is still in jail, and there will still be a trial. Mountains of evidence exonerates Rodney Reed. All of that evidence was kept from the all-white jury that convicted him. Instead, the evidence implicates the victim's fiancé, local police officer Jimmy Fennell, who has a history of violence against women, including being convicted for kidnapping and sexual assault soon after Rodney was wrongly sent to prison. We must continue to organize to bring Rodney home and to end the racist and deeply problematic death penalty. Sign the petition. About the case. Stacey Stites died in April 1996. Nearly 1 year later, Bastrop sheriffs arrested a 29-year-old black man named Rodney Reed. He was charged with capital murder, citing DNA evidence matching Reed's DNA to a small amount of sperm found inside the body. Prosecutors successfully argued that this was enough evidence to prove that Reed was responsible for her brutal sexual assault and murder. Rodney has steadfastly maintained his innocence from day one. Absolutely zero evidence exists that Rodney had anything at all to do with this crime. He was in a consensual relationship with Stacey Stites, and the only DNA of Rodney's that was found was from this consensual relationship. The prosecution, citing that DNA persuaded an all-white jury of his guilt, he was convicted and sentenced to die by lethal injection. Currently, he is scheduled to die in just a few days on November 20, 2019. The original suspect in the case was Stites' fiancé, Jimmy Fennell, a brutal police officer with a history of violence against women. After the murder of Stacey Stites, Fennell kidnapped a woman and sexually assaulted her while on duty as a police officer. He was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison for this. Despite sworn affidavits from witnesses establishing that Jimmy Fennell threatened to kill Stites before, and that he has subsequently confessed to the crime, and compelling expert testimony establishing Reed's innocence, all requests to evaluate new evidence have been unsuccessful. Reasonable doubt. The DNA evidence cited by the prosecution resulted from a consensual sexual relationship with Stites. Multiple witnesses confirm this, including members of Stites' family. The case is on face implausible. The prosecution claims that Reed was able to break into Stites' car on foot while she was inside it, and committed a brutal murder and sexual assault without leaving any physical evidence behind. No DNA evidence links Reed to the scene of the crime or any other element of the murder. Requests to test the murder weapon for DNA have been repeatedly denied. Stites was most likely murdered by her fiancé, Jimmy Fennell Jr. Fennell was the original prime suspect in the case. His fellow police officer now admits that Fennell gave him completely inconsistent accounts of his whereabouts at the time of the murder. His most recent claim is impossible based on the most recent evidence. Even though he was the prime suspect at the time, police never searched the apartment that Stites and Fennell shared. Multiple witnesses swear under oath that Fennell knew about Stites' affair with Reed, threatened to kill her because of it, and made it clear at her funeral that he believed she got what he deserved. Fennell was subsequently incarcerated for another violent sexual assault. In his efforts to join the Aryan Brotherhood, he bragged to other prisoners that he murdered his wife for sleeping with a black man, stating, "I had to kill my unloving fiancé." Fennell has a long history of violence against women, including multiple complaints about his behavior towards women as a police officer. Evidence ignored. 3 experts that testified during the trial have recanted their testimony, stating that the original time of death is inaccurate, which makes the entire case implausible. Despite their claims that they were wrong at the time, and that the prosecution misinterpreted their testimony in the first place, the state of Texas continues to ignore this evidence. Renowned forensic pathologists including Michael Baden, M.D., Werner Spitz, M.D., Leroy Riddick, M.D., and Cyril Wecht, M.D. have all concluded that Reed's guilt is medically and scientifically impossible. Reed's requests to have the murder weapon tested in this case have been repeatedly denied.
Self-described QAnon shaman charged in the Capitol attack is now getting organic food behind bars. His lawyer says Jacob Chansley went 9 days without eating. The judge granted the request on religious grounds.
A warrant for the defendant's arrest, and I think that's what it said, or something. The DA's office issued a warrant for his arrest, and you know, this case. Look, I want to have a fair trial in this case. And I want everybody, I mentioned this in my earlier order, I want everybody to act in a way that maximizes the possibility of fairness in this case, fairness to everybody who's involved. And I don't want to, this case is not going to be decided by demonstrators of one type or another. And frankly, it's not going to affect anything I do, and I don't think it's going to, I don't want to whip stuff up so it affects a fair trial in this case to decide it strictly on the evidence. So I don't want to hear about a demonstration last weekend, okay? Because if we do that, then tomorrow we'll have a demonstration by people who view things differently, okay?
And that's
the less anything other than just strictly discussing what the facts and the evidence are occurs, the more likely we are to have a trial that's fair to the defendant, which is his constitutional guarantee, and to the public, which is my responsibility. So, Richard.
All I have, Your Honor. I believe Ms. Motley and maybe Attorney Art, also on behalf of the victims, would like to give a brief statement as well. And I would ask the court.
You know that I don't permit the use of the term victim before adjudication in this or any other case, and I haven't for years. So please don't use that term. And I know this is an awkward situation, but I do not permit the terms victim or alleged victim unless and until there's been an adjudication. So these are folks who are speaking on behalf of the families of the deceased.
Your Honor,
yes.
John Huber is the father of Anthony Huber, who was killed by Mr. Rittenhouse, and he's here in yellow, and he would like to address the court if Your Honor will hear from him.
Go ahead. Would you identify yourself?
The homicide where a male of color was given a $2.5 million bond, $2.5 million. And we ask that the court also take that in consideration, since Mr. Richards found it necessary to bring up something that was not relevant to this proceeding. We think that this is relevant for the court to consider when setting the bond conditions and increasing the bail if the court so orders. Thank you.
Well, I will tell you that I am not going to decide anything in this case or any other on the basis of the color of anybody's skin, period.
Then I feel like I need to have this information. And certainly no one on this Zoom call needs to be reminded of the events of 6 months ago. We have the loved ones of two deceased and a victim who was shot in the arm by the defendant that night. So
please don't use the term victim.
Mr. Grosskreutz was shot in the arm.
Witness.
Your Honor.
Reporting bond violations and the like to us, and I think the same situation is true now. Hearing's over. Thank you.
The defendant doesn't reside in Kenosha County, Your Honor. The sheriff can't help me because he doesn't reside.
Thank you.
Kelly's attorneys will ask for his release from federal custody before an appeals court on Friday, arguing that the singer has been unable to prepare for his upcoming trial for nearly 6 months. The singer has not seen his attorneys in person since March, when prisons went into lockdown, cutting off in-person legal visits due to coronavirus concerns, his attorney told CNN. His trial was scheduled to begin at the end of September in federal court in Brooklyn, but was delayed in part due to the pandemic. His legal team says that because the singer can't read or write, he can't review legal documents in his case, make notes or, meaningfully, communicate with lawyers without in-person meetings. He has essentially been cut out of the discovery and preparation process, attorney Tom Farinella, who will argue Kelly's bail appeal before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, wrote in a court filing. This will be the 6th time Kelly's legal team has argued for his release since he was taken into federal custody in July 2019. 4 of the requests, including Friday's appeal, were made amid the pandemic, which attorneys argue has put Kelly at risk for developing severe complications from the virus. 3 of the previous requests were denied. Kelly is facing charges in New York including racketeering and violations of the Mann Act, which prohibits trafficking for prostitution or sexual activity. The charges Kelly faces stem from activity that prosecutors say took place over 2 decades in New York, Connecticut, Illinois and California. Kelly was also indicted on federal charges in Illinois for child pornography and obstruction, as well as state charges of aggravated criminal sexual abuse. He has pleaded not guilty to all of the charges. Farinella argues that Kelly's only way of communicating with attorneys is through phone calls that do not possess the safeguards of confidentiality needed to have meaningful attorney-client privileged conversations. Even if Friday's appeal is granted, Kelly would still need to win an appeal for bail on federal charges in Illinois before being released. Prosecutors. Releasing Kelly would be dangerous. Prosecutors argue releasing Kelly would be dangerous because he is a flight risk, a danger to the community, and because he has a history of tampering with witnesses and jurors. Part of prosecutors' argument for keeping Kelly behind bars involves his access to money. While Kelly's defense team argues in court filings that he has almost no liquid financial resources, prosecutors say the singer has received over $200,000 in royalty proceeds in the first quarter of 2020 alone.
Facing more serious consequences. We've got to end this entitlement mentality, the mentality that allowed her to go into the Capitol, to post about it on Facebook, and now to ask a judge to allow her to go on vacation. That has to stop, and it needs to stop now.
Riot is asking a court to let her leave the country. Jenny Cudd was charged with 2 misdemeanors, knowingly entering a restricted building and disorderly conduct on Capitol grounds for her actions on January 6th. Her lawyers say that she plans to plead not guilty to those charges, but take a look at the Facebook video that she posted that day.
We didn't knock down any statues. We didn't vandalize anything, but we did. We did, as I say that, we did break down the Nancy Pelosi's office door, and somebody stole her gavel and took a picture sitting in the chair, flipping off the camera, and that was on Fox News.
Now, Cudd, who owns a flower shop, wants to go on what she's calling a work-related bonding retreat in Mexico. So let's talk about this with CNN legal analyst and civil rights attorney Areva Martin. Areva, like what the heck here? Because I know people are looking at especially what she said on her Facebook page, and they're saying, this is someone who invaded the Capitol, in a group of people trying to overthrow the government. Why are they being allowed out of jail? And certainly, why would a request like this perhaps be considered?
Brianna, this is outrageous. And anyone that believes in the rule of law should be appalled, not only by her comments, her post on Facebook, but her brazen attitude. She's laughing, she's chuckling. She says, we did knock down the door of Nancy Pelosi's office. This isn't someone that crashed their neighbor's party. This is someone that broke into the nation's capital, breached our capital while the votes were being certified for our presidential election. The fact that these individuals like her, these insurrectionists, are being charged with these minor misdemeanors, being let out of jail, and now having the unmitigated gall to suggest that she wants to go on some kind of vacation is really upsetting and frustrating. I don't see why we don't have more of these individuals being charged with things tied to insurrection.
Charged in the riot at the U.S. Capitol will be allowed to go out of the country. Texas resident Jenny Cudd was charged last month and is free on personal recognizance as she was seen inside the Capitol building after a pro-Trump mob stormed it back on January 6th. On Friday, U.S. District Judge Trevor McFadden granted a request allowing Cudd to travel to Mexico at the end of the month. That request said it was a pre-planned, prepaid retreat with employees in Riviera Maya. McFadden wrote that Cudd has no criminal history and he did not cite her as a flight risk. Cudd will have to provide authorities with her itinerary.
While most everyone in America is sheltering in place in fear of coronavirus, some celebrities behind bars, such Bill Cosby and R.Kelly, are pressing to be released from lockups where they fear the killer virus is raging or soon will be. On Wednesday, the 23-year-old Brooklyn rapper Tekashi 6ix9ine, real name Daniel Hernandez, who suffers from asthma and once was hospitalized for bronchitis, was released from a federal prison to serve the remaining 4 months of his 2-year racketeering sentence in home confinement, according to Nicholas Biasi, spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York. The government did not oppose counsel's motion for compassionate release because the defendant's medical condition placed him at high risk during the coronavirus outbreak, Biasi said in a statement emailed to USA Today. Don Florio, one of his lawyers, confirmed his release to USA Today and said the rapper and his legal team were super ecstatic, about the news. Last week, the New York judge who sentenced Tekashi said that he would have ordered home confinement instead if he had known about coronavirus in December. Other judges have either turned down celebrities or not yet ruled. Bill Cosby's lawyers are asking Pennsylvania Governor Tom Wolf to reconsider their request for compassionate release for Cosby in light of the coronavirus. They claim that his medical history makes him more vulnerable to the coronavirus. With several positive COVID-19 cases already confirmed at Cy Phoenix in Montgomery County, where he is being held, Cosby's lawyers requested he serves the rest of his sentence from home. On April 10, Wolf ordered the Department of Corrections to transfer select people currently incarcerated to community correctional facilities or home confinement. Cosby's lawyers were certain he would be among the few permitted to serve their sentence from home. On April 16, Cosby's longtime friend and publicist Andrew Wyatt released a statement saying, "We truly believe that Mr. Cosby will be a direct beneficiary of Governor Wolf's executive order." A Pennsylvania Department of Corrections spokesperson dismissed any speculation that Cosby would be released to home confinement. Sex offenders are not eligible under the reprieve criteria, the spokesperson told Fox News. Despite their request for compassionate release, their appeal was denied, officials say, because Cosby is considered a violent offender. On Saturday, his lawyers released new information about Cosby's medical history in the hopes that Wolf will reconsider. According to Cosby's lawyers, he would not survive COVID-19 behind bars because of his medical history, which includes 2 major surgeries since last fall to relieve blockages in his carotid arteries to prevent a heart attack. They also revealed that Cosby is now completely blind due to glaucoma. "We are asking Governor Wolf to amend his executive order and grant Mr. Cosby compassionate relief based on his current medical status," said Wyatt in a second statement. In an interview with Fox News, Wyatt said, "It seems it's more politically motivated and personally motivated to not let this man out. It's very upsetting and disappointing."
In the madness of the riot, as violence erupted, Grayson Courtwright posed for her Instagram feed. The college student from Kentucky beaming, "Can't wait to tell my grandkids I was here." While Jenny Cudd, a flower shop owner from Texas, who's expected to plead not guilty, admits she went exploring.
We did break down Nancy Pelosi's office door, and somebody stole her gavel.
Arrest records list more than 20 women charged in the uproar, and that's no surprise for Sayward Darby.
They're being told, you are the revolution, you are the radicals.
She's written about women in extremist movements and says many embrace a very conservative view of life.
Women are being appealed to by being told, you are mothers, you are, the protectors of your home, of your family, and now is the time to stand up and fight for that.
Among those charged, Christine Priola, a mother and former school therapist from Ohio. Dawn Bancroft, a gym owner who prosecutors say posted a video claiming she was looking for Nancy to shoot her in the friggin' brain. CNN has reached out for comment, no response. Authorities say there was a salon owner, a corrections officer, the woman shot and killed, an Air Force veteran, and Jenna Ryan, a realtor and radio host from Texas.
I went to serve my country because our president, President Donald Trump, asked us to go to the march.
A Christian fundraising site is being used to help with what her lawyer says will be a not guilty plea. Jenna is not a terrorist, but a freedom-loving patriot who needs your help. Her legal bills are expected to be $50,000. But how did they all allegedly wind up here?
Tens of thousands of women are already at work in aircraft.
Just as the government asked women to pitch in during World War II by appealing to them as mothers and community members, experts say movements like QAnon are doing the same now. telling women the nation needs them to stand up amid political warfare and a raging pandemic, no matter how dishonest that recruitment may be.
Today, I have strongly recommended to every governor to deploy the National Guard in sufficient numbers that we dominate the streets.
Mr. President, are you further asking?
That's a hose.
Guys,
hose.
move.
Guys,
move.
Press, let's go. Come on. Guys, we gotta go.
Let me be clear. The president just used a Bible, the most sacred text of the Judeo-Christian tradition, and one of the churches of my diocese, without permission, as a backdrop for a message antithetical to the teachings of Jesus and everything that our churches stand for. And to do so, as you just said, he sanctioned the use of tear gas by police officers in riot gear to clear the church yard. I am outraged.
So go home. We love you. You're very special. You've seen what happens. You see the way others are treated that are so bad and so evil. I know how you feel. But go home and go home in peace.
Every young person I've spoken to, especially young people of color, got the message loud and clear that they can be beaten, arrested, and worse for jaywalking, for just being an African American in a store, and yet you can have a band of white traitors go and tear up the Capitol building and walk out, and were escorted out. They were escorted in and escorted out. None of those people they should all be in jail right now. If I right now, or anybody that I know, were to go and just literally push their way past the Capitol Guard today or a week ago, we'd be in jail. And so the fact that all those people, now you got to try to figure out who they are. You had them. They were all in one place. Usually you're going to see city buses lined up from here for 3 miles you're going to see plastic handcuffs of protesters, quote unquote protesters, doing anything, and they get thrown to the ground or sometimes peacefully arrested. But nobody leaves on foot. Everybody leaves with their little hands in plastic handcuffs in the back of big city buses heading off to jail. That's the price of a protest. If you're black, if you're a progressive, the price of protesting, I don't mean a riot. I just mean civil disobedience. Just sitting down on the steps and they tell you to get up and you don't get up. The price of that is you go to jail for a night. Everybody knows that in D.C. And so to watch a completely lawless a band of traitors and insurrectionists go and tear up the Capitol, bring guns to the Capitol, put their feet up on people's stuff, take pictures of emails, walk out possibly with all kinds. We don't know what they walked out with. We don't know if they took sensitive documents. We have no idea. They were walking past cops. Nobody knew that they had guns in their pockets, if they had sensitive information, and now those people are eating a pancake someplace. It is an unbelievable statement about race in this country. It's an unbelievable statement about what it means when you have strongman tactics from a would-be authoritarian who has now whipped up his own private street mob that can do what it wants to with impunity. This is banana republic stuff, and it's very dangerous. But you just sent the best message you could ever send, or the worst, to a whole generation, black, white, brown, and otherwise, that there is a double standard like you would not believe. All tens of thousands of people went to jail protesting around George Floyd, all of them did way worse than the worst that you saw in the seat of power. And 13 of those people went to jail last night. Tens of thousands of people went to jail for George Floyd. That's all. You just taught a generation about the need for real reform in this country.
All you did was get rich out these war crimes. It's a conspiracy. Who's the terrorist? The U.S. government must be the terrorist.